So today we're going to talk about shills. Now some of you are like, well, you're not a truther. You didn't find this program because you're into MK Ultra Radio. For our core fans, they absolutely know what the word means. But I want to talk about shills because I think that there's a pattern for all of us when we get introduced to the concept. And it goes something like this. You're completely asleep. Something happens. You wake up. And you believe everything that you're told within the truth movement. And then you realize some people are lying even within the truth movement. And you hear a person use the word shill. And I think a shill is a very interesting, deep concept if it's a real shill. So I want to make a distinction here between perhaps someone who's trying to find the truth and simply is wrong, but they're trying their very best. Someone who's hung up on the truth, right? I should say, someone who's hung up on the official story and can't get out of it, right? And so whatever they hear, they change a little bit, so it kind of preserves their heart. It makes it so, again, the next morning they don't have to get up and do anything, right? And then you have bona fide shills. And I actually think that the number of real shills in the world is very slim. So let's define the basic principles of what a shill would be within some type of truth movement. First and foremost, a shill gets a paycheck for what they do. There's no other reason to do it. There's no other way to survive being a shill, which is a career liar, without getting a paycheck. Then you have people that are just off on crazy theories for a really long time. But a shill has got to be someone who's tied to the agenda. Al Gore is a shill. Al Gore owns part of, Blood and Gore. He services carbon tax credits with his company, Blood and Gore, which is part of the, the CXX, or the CCX, the Climate Change Exchange out of Chicago. And so he is trying to convince you to get into carbon taxation, and he's maneuvered a company in place to take advantage of those carbon credits going back and forth without actually ever really being an exchange himself. He's almost like a broker for carbon taxation. He put a movie out at the end of 2006 saying virtually all the coasts of the world would be underwater, and he buys a house in Montecito, which for those of you who don't know is on the coast of California, which he predicted in his models, in his movie, Inconvenient Truth. Isn't that great how they say that, right? Inconvenient line of bullshit. But he predicted his own house would have been underwater. Meanwhile, this guy's electric bill per month is around $50,000. He's been caught chasing his maid naked around his house. The guy's a fucking creep. But he gets a paycheck for what he says, and he gets everything that he says written for him. The guy is basically a bad puppet. Right. Again, once we rid ourselves of this fucking broadcast speak, a politician speak, and you forbid anyone to stand in your presence and talk to you in those bullshit tones, someone like Al Gore automatically stands out as a bad actor. Now, we're going to get into how shills behave and how they run their little scam after we kind of call out a few of the species of shills that are out there, right? Now, Al Gore, he's been in politics his whole life, right? And politics is essentially a way to run away from life, right? Just like they said in History of the World Part 1, when he was talking about being a philosopher, I would make that a politician, and she basically said if he had bullshitted that day, did you try to bullshit today? Yes. That's a politician. They live outside of society. They don't have any idea what a gallon of milk costs. They commit crimes constantly because they're above the law. And because the people want to believe in this paradigm, they write these guys blank checks constantly, right? There's no accountability whatsoever for what they say. Shills. The second kind of shill is someone who started out innocent and going for the truth, and then they were co-opted by something else. I would say in extremely rare cases, they're co-opted by threats, where someone comes up and says, you're going to start changing your story. And, if you don't change your story, we're going to kill you. I think that's probably infinitesimally small. The second way it happens is people just get into financial trouble. And the way to get out, the way to get a paycheck is to toe a line. And you see this a lot with old men. I think your Neil deGrasse Tyson is a shill. Neil deGrasse Tyson gets through his academic part of his career, realizes that you get tenure in retirement, and that's about it. And I'm not quite sure how he pierced the veil of celebrity, but he got into the celebrity circuit where people who are mostly stupid in the world, when they hear anything that sounds like science, they just say, that guy's fucking smart. Big Bang's real. Venus and Mars, well, we better pay attention because they used to have a full society on those planets. And Neil said that they lost the whole thing due to one event. And if we don't buy carbon taxation, then we're going to have it here on Earth. That guy's 150,000% asshole scumbag shill. Absolutely. If he is so fucking smart, he would look at the Big Bang and just walk away from it. But anyone who's towing the Big Bang is either an idiot or a shill. Stephen W. Hawking, he holds the position of Isaac Newton at Cambridge. He came out with a book, and I forgot which one in the series it was. I think it was his third one, but it was the end of a paragraph. I remember reading this. He was referring to the Big Bang. And he said, I no longer think that the universe was created by one single explosion. And that's really all he said. He moved on throughout his book, and then the next book he wrote was all about how the Big Bang was the way it started. Someone got up his ass and said, you know what, man? We've worked a long time to put the whole fucking universe in a nutshell of absolute absurdity. We don't know how to leave this planet. We don't know how to travel the stars, and we know how the universe started. Yeah, just because you can figure that out by looking at it through a telescope. Absolutely absurd. The reverse engineering to that theory is just conjecture and bullshit on times bullshit. Then you have people that we don't, they might start out with the talk show, sort of like us, I guess. And you know what? I'm nobody in the backyard. If you see me get famous, then you're going to automatically, and you should, ask questions. Okay, what's this guy saying? Did he change his story? Is he getting softer on all the things he was so sure about? Sort of like Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan came out hardcore, got a lot of popularity and credibility in the truth movement. And now his shows are like, let's drop peyote, let's talk about DMT, and by the way, he went to the moon. Right. He sold himself out because he probably got tired of fighting the game. And he doesn't have time, again, to research all the stuff that he would need to crush these douchebags, get on his show or get in talk shows with him and call him a liar or call him wrong, right? I think that just a couple things I want to make a distinction of, because I think at the really low level shows like ours, right? We're just two dudes who, when we get together, we record a talk show. So I want to make a distinction with, big players and small players, right? So there are definitely guys, I think, that are sort of not in the public eye that much. You don't know where they go to work. You don't know where they get their check. And they toe the party line. Now, there's some people who are just duped, right? They're just duped and they toe the party line. They don't know they're towing the party line. Kyle and I might be stuck in towing the party line as well. We simply don't know that we're doing it, right? If we're doing it, I guarantee you, we would be very pissed off to find out we were dragging something through, which is why there's virtually no topics that Kyle and I do not reanalyze constantly. Right. This whole thing with the Middle East navigating into Europe as if they have a lack of land to live. It's ridiculous, right? It makes us wonder, why is the EU, a European Union, which is largely sort of a, British, French, German, Spanish, Norwegian, Swedish faction, demanding that Europe get completely infiltrated by Arabs that have plenty of land to live on? Why is that? Who's in control of the fucking world, man? It's really difficult to put put a pin in it, right? Some of us wondered our whole life why the Arabs don't run the world, because the Arabs have all the oil. 25% of all the oil in the world's purchased out of one place, and it's filtered just to a few families, right? Why don't they run the world? They're focused, right? They're focused just like the rumored Rothschilds are focused. So we're not quite sure. So we reevaluate everything, and I think that's something that a shill doesn't do. A shill's got marching orders, and a shill typically focuses what they're saying because they are on for one specific agenda. Because they don't get their paycheck unless their mouth moves or they tippity type on a blog and push their agenda forward. But they're not dynamic, they don't change, they don't evolve, and they sure as hell do not try to help man. There's no money being a shill helping each other. No money at all, right? And they typically become specialists, right? There's the guy Dane, and I forget his last name. He's a big chemtrail guy. You know, he's got tons of fucking money. I mean, the guy owns, 2,500 acres up against Mount Shasta, maybe even more. He's one of the co-inventors of solar panels, which is essentially shit technology to replace electricity, which is kind of a shill product, right? Someone may have meant to make that product great, but it's just fucking rubbish. It's trash. You know, put all that effort into 0-point energy. Put all that energy into resurrecting Stan Meyer's invention. Let's get over this crappy metabolization of sunlight. At least in that way, right? But he mentions climate change constantly in all of his lectures, and he is linking it to chemtrails. So we're just not quite sure about this guy. He does disappear from our eyesight, and he does have tons of money. He doesn't seem to work anymore. He just runs around and does these presentations. So that guy is A1 suspect of being a shill because he doesn't have to work. Kyle and I have to work, just so you know. And we're not getting any checks from anybody that's remotely awake, let alone towing an agenda. So I know what you're thinking. You know, before we get into how shills typically transform, and that'll get us more species of shills when we talk about how they transform, but as we team up in the world and try to compare notes, I know that it's very nerve-wracking to try to figure out who's telling the truth and who's telling a lie, and you need to understand that at least the PSYOPs here in America, the Army PSYOPs group, their job is to spit out disinformation, to discredit sort of folks that don't do due diligence on what they believe. Folks that don't have science behind them, but are willing to repeat things that they don't understand. You know, how many times have you seen a picket line where they get the microphone right up into someone's face and they say, "What the hell are you protesting about?" And nobody can talk about what they care about. I remember the very first times I saw protests about nuclear power. And at the time, I was super pro-nuclear power because I didn't understand the byproduct of toxicity. And they put this microphone in this kid's mouth. He was the son of one of the activists there, and the kid just blathered on the microphone. Sounded like a complete idiot. And, of course, anybody who was on the fence, who doesn't know the science, is going to hear that kid be a moron, and then all of a sudden, they're more pro-nuclear than ever. And I certainly had that experience, right? You know, the way we form trust, which is sort of the counterbalance of suspicion and shill calling, right, is usually by having an interpersonal relationship that is very physical. Like, I see you. We physically sit on the same patio. We go get beers together. We go hang out together. And we have long, deep conversations like this where you can kind of ask me a million questions and I can answer them. And you start to round out, oh, I see where Mark is. We're not on the same page everywhere, but I see where he's going. You know, and I see him get up in the morning and go to work across the street, and, you know, he's a normal dude, right? There's this desire to be as informed as possible once you become a truther, right? It's almost like you're getting out of poisonous foods, but there's no GMO labeling on the food at the grocery store, nor is there non-GMO labeling. And so you're trying to do your best to look on the shelves and try to find food that's not, you know, geared to kill you. And so that can get extremely frustrating when you're meeting people online. And so Kyle and I never even thought of being accused of being shills. It was interesting until someone did it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, and it's fair game, man. I would do it too. I mean, I don't have any criticism for anyone doing that. In fact, one of the reasons why I want to make this show is that I've had, and this is no personal thing to anybody, because I've talked to at least half a dozen fans that have been concerned about other fans being shills, about us being shills, and I always tell everybody, there's got to be a point where you sort of eject out everything that someone's telling you and then slowly bring it in if it happens to make sense. If there's any questions as you bring all the subjects in you've kind of effortlessly absorbed, then we start to ask the question. But again, I think a true shill is someone who's getting a paycheck. I just don't see how it can be anything other than that. Who's going to volunteer for the New World Order? I just can't imagine that happening, right? Let's get into how shills work. And this is just my layman's view of what I think I've seen occur. I'm going to mention some folks as I go through this shill thing. And some folks, I'm going to make it very clear who I think is a shill. And I'm going to put in a big question mark for some other individuals, right? But an orchestrated shill, and there's been some good ones I've seen online, there's a formula to it. And when they're getting a paycheck and when the Army Corps of PsyOps makes a shill and pays them to move in and do things, there's always a pattern to their game, and it's never anything else other than this. And it goes something like this, very simple. They have an agenda they want you to toe. Now, let's just say, I'm going to make this up completely from scratch, but let's just say that someone wants to cleanse chemtrails. All right. Well, they already have the game of, they know what chemtrails are, and they've got the shill plan to get us off track, to somehow adjust our theory to chemtrails as such that they're not chemical trails in the sky that pollute our air with particulates, which give us asthma and make our immune systems deteriorate so that we catch whatever's going around, right? There's no flu in the chemtrails. It just breaks you down to whatever you're going to catch will make you sick, at least in the basic form of just a particulate, right? There's all kinds of rumors of crazy, blood cells and dust that comes out. Forget all that. Okay. So they know what they are, and they know that they can cite technicalities to move us off the beaten path. Accuse it of being something else, slightly more benign, maybe even bad, but not as bad as we thought. Something we can forget about. Something we can look up in the sky and go, well, you know what it really is. It's this other thing, right? And, it was the shield for global warming was the first shilly thing that happened with chemtrails. As they said, it's a mandate that it's in the air to protect us from the sun. Of course, in the summertime, we never get sprayed when it's the hottest, right? Or we don't get sprayed that much. Used to be they never sprayed. Now they spray just every once in a while, about maybe once a month here. This Los Angeles, Orange County has been extremely clear for weeks at this point. So they have to get this person they're going to hire to be the shill has to have a little piece of truth that no one's ever heard. Something edgy, something interesting. I'm just going to make it up, but let's just say that, we don't know exactly where a lot of these planes take off from. And there's been a lot of photographs of the interior of aerosol spraying jumbo jets, right? Not just the counterbalance photographs when Boeing does a test run on their plane, they'll actually put big water tanks where all the seats are. And that just simulates the people that would normally be inside the vehicle. So that's not an aerosol dispensing photograph you're seeing. You're seeing just something that counterbalances it out. But there are definite shots with huge, giant, massive tanks that have pumps in the background, patent numbers we can look up for aerosol spraying. There's just a bunch of fairly credible interior shots of these planes with outside dispensers that actually, distribute the chemical inside. But let's just say they say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give you some photographs that no one's ever seen before. And that's going to help you gain credibility with these truthers. Now, here is what you're going to say. Here's your script, and here's some other photographs we've sort of synthesized that's going to get them off the beaten path. Instead of being barium and aluminum, it's going to be something different and something more benign, right? And here's some fake data that you're going to say you scooped out of your backyard. And we got 4 or 5 other people. As soon as you say it, we're going to drop them on the internet. And it's going to look like the movement's going in a completely different direction. Everyone was wrong. It's this other chemical. And then we'll dump it out of the sky and people can find it who are just, close to the project. They really are truthers. We're going to seed them as well. Somehow, they find a venue to put this guy on. Whether it be an interview from somewhere, or the guy just has a really cool website. Maybe they synthesize up some YouTube videos that the guy narrates. But something gets this guy on deck so we can see him and he can talk, right? Then the guy starts talking. They start to measure how well he's being accepted with his secret coveted information that they've given the guy that's real. Then they start doing the twist. They start doing the information that's going to start ebbing the mind away, and he's going to be very convincing usually. The guys will be like, but you know what I figured out? It wasn't really this, it was this other thing. All right, and they rehearse this like crazy, and the guy does the twist and moves it around. And eventually he's pipered away a bunch of people that were on track on the right area to be looking at the wrong stuff. There's folks out there that when they just debut into certain agendas that have been around for a long time, and all of a sudden they have a massive presence online, we start to go, whoa, this looks a little too strong and heavy-handed. Where's this guy getting all this popularity? Like, MKUltra Radio has been on the air now for a year and a half. And so it took us a long time to make 150 episodes. And let's just say a guy comes out of absolutely nowhere. His YouTube account's 2 months old, and the guy's got 75 videos. And they just seem to be like consecutive back-to-back pounding of this new agenda. That shows sort of an impossibility without financial backing, without assistance, right? It could happen, but it's not likely to happen. So that is your most pure form of shill. When I went and saw the documentary, like I said, I really didn't finish up my story on the chemtrail episode with Dr. Griffin, who was just paraded around the internet as this incredible god of fucking truth, right? Well, I went to his little special down here in Fountain Valley, watched his video outside, and then we got to the Q&A. What I forgot to mention was that anytime someone talked about bullshit related to chemtrails being fuel additives and all this other crap that absolutely deny the way that these things are sprayed in the sky, he had all the time in the world to listen to that guy and elaborate. The second that I started talking and saying, look, I brought my iPad with me. I've got a whole series of photographs in here. And, this stuff starts and stops on a dime. It is not any type of environmental anomaly. Blah, 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 blah. And the audience started saying, yes, what that guy's saying. It was at least 5 people. One lady even stood up and was like pointing at my freaking iPad saying, we need to talk about this because this is what I'm seeing and it's bullshit. And what that guy said back there doesn't make any sense. Griffin would not fucking look at me and would not keep the conversation going. So for me, at that point, that guy's the fucking shill. All right? I will not parade him around anyone's movement at all. If he's involved with your movement, you got a shill in your fucking midst, man. And I don't give a crap. He's in there to, finance and talk about things so he can stay on top of the information. He's a full infiltrator spy to these organizations, at least according to me, right? Because anybody who was interested in the truth would have elaborated on the conversation because all the other conversation pieces were super duper rehearsed, right? So I've seen them myself and they piss me off, and we just have to basically cut them completely off. And when we have a chance like this, throw them under the bus, light them on fire, and burn them down to a core carbonized nothingness, right? The other type of shill sort of is like your Faustus, right? Let's talk about Glenn Beck for a second. Glenn Beck, let's just take a look at this Ophi butter boy. I would assume that his personal life lacks a lot of the merits and accomplishments that he set out for himself when his mother hugged him too much as a child. But what this guy has done is he's come out as a journalist for Fox News. Let's go back to Rod Serling's pre-censorship regiment of saying we're going to figure out what people believe before they become employed, so that way we know we just control them by sheer design of their infantile minds, right? Or they're devious guys, and then they just absolutely, like Sean Hannity, they fucking know exactly what they're doing, and they just are big fucking bullies, right? But Glenn Beck, went on air one morning on the, was it Fox Morning with Fox or some bullshit, and he seemed to be on the precipice of waking up and actually being a true hero. And he was talking about the FEMA camps. And he looked utterly distressed, as if he did not sleep the night before. And he said, look, man, I thought this was a conspiracy. I thought this was all crazy. And he goes, look, man, we found over 950 so far, and the number's climbing. It looks closer to 1,200, and we're going to break this story at 6 o'clock tonight. By 6 o'clock that night, he said, oh, you know what? My investigation isn't really complete. We've made some mistakes, and we're not going to air this program. And you never, ever heard it aired, right? Then what happens? He has this big blowout with Fox, and he goes off and does this little sideshow. And I'm not sure if it's on Fox. I think it's on a different network now, right? And now he's supposedly this fucking hero of truth. It's just like Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald was sent to Russia to be this cooey little guy so that when he came back and they needed to blame this thing on him, everyone believed it. Well, goddamn, he sold the U-2 secrets to the Russians. Of course he killed Kennedy. Right, sort of qualified him as this insider, this anti-establishment kind of guy. Well, Glenn Beck has done exactly the same thing. He is, left Fox, and he's run over, and now they've basically shilled him. He turned into a shill that day, that night when he refused to report on his own story. He sold his soul, just boom, just like that. And everything after that has been a setup. But what's Glenn Beck's format on television? He starts talking lucidity, starts talking like a truther, and by the time it's over, it's all twisted up inside the New World agendas every single time. One, protecting FEMA camps. So that's a guy who has nothing else to do with his career. I mean, he's going to be either unemployed or he's going to do whatever they say. And you know what? People who don't master multiple skills, that don't have integrity as their highest quality in their soul, would rather be employed selling bullshit than be unemployed and actually have some integrity when they die. There's always a job out there, no matter how screwed up you are, right? Glenn's got a following. He could start his own network, for Christ's sake, right, and just tell the truth. So Glenn's an easy one. Glenn's super cut and dry shill, 100%. He'll be a shill until the day he dies, unless somehow he leaves the network or does one of these broadcast news, breakthrough speeches where he's like, they've been telling me what to do, and fuck them. I'm just going to say the truth. FEMA camps are real. 9/11's an inside job, et cetera, right? But he won't do it. I guarantee it. All right. So then you have people that have greatly affected your life who have waken you up. But now they seem a little weird, right? Alex Jones, whom I have great respect for, worries me. He worries me deeply. On one side of the fence, he says things that I think are very, very true. On the other side of the fence, he no longer makes movies. If you were to subtract out every single person who's a truther today who is a systemic child of an Alex Jones documentary being filmed, you would get rid of Kyle and I to a great extent, most likely. And you would get rid of a lot of the people that we've influenced over the years, not just our fans here on the show, but fans in real life. And we do get around and talk. So Alex Jones no longer making movies is a coup de grace from somebody to Alex Jones, because he has more resources now than he has ever had. And now he has newscasters taking up his 3-hour spot in the morning if he so chooses to give it up, because he has 24-hour news. It doesn't mean everything that they report isn't true, or at least trying to be true. But we do believe we've caught him synthesizing up some evidence with the radioactive beach. But, in terms of chemtrails, for instance, Alex Jones said he was going to make a movie on chemtrails. And all of a sudden, it just disappeared. They even licensed in my whole photo collection from onepagenews.com. I had to sign paperwork to give rights to Alex Jones to use it. And I was like, dude, I've got some of the best photographs on planet Earth. I have the evolution of their spraying style, from bold and ridiculous because everybody was asleep to really sleek and amazing, and now, wisps into cloud-looking things, right? So that your average layman goes, what's a cloud, man? So Alex needs money now. He needs money now like crazy. So when you need cash, then you've got a dependency issue. Obviously, the people who run the world run it because they have control of what? Money. Yes. So Alex is now pimping all kinds of stuff in the middle of his episodes. And you know what? It might be fantastic. I actually wish I knew the guy and I could call him or even, hang out with him every once in a while and see him pop the same shit that he's selling. And see something transform in his body, see him get thinner, see him get healthier, have more energy, whatever it is. I hope, his stuff works, right? See him pop his iodine stuff, right? Would love to see that. But right now I have to call into question even the validity of his products at this point. And I used to routinely buy every single movie that he would release and a lot of the products in his store because the store wasn't so massive back in the day. But it was my way of actually supporting what he did. I just buy his books. And, it's like, sometimes I'd read them, sometimes I'd give them to friends. But at one point, I owned every single thing that he ever published on DVD. And eventually, I just gave it all away. But I'm concerned about an Alex Jones and his dependency on the cash flow because of the output that has so affected the truth movement. That guy can take credit for a gigantic part of the pie slice waking up in the world. Even if you don't know it, you might actually have been awakened by someone that actually was awakened by Alex. It's pretty phenomenal, right? Now he does, he has certain, loyalties and things to paradigms that I think should just not be in his show, but whatever. He talks about his religion from time to time. But whatever, it's cool. He's his own man. But again, I would love to see something very definitive to straighten that guy out in my mind. Just something that he does outside in the world. Like if he starts making films again, I think it would be, and films to the degree of like Endgame. Endgame is one of the most incredible films ever made. I think about Endgame nearly every day of my frickin' life. It's that frickin' powerful. And I think if that guy were to engage in chemtrails or something big. The guy is always on his show moving paper around in front of your face. Well, it's documented. It's documented. Okay, fine. Cut a film so you can stop saying it. Because once you cut a film, you just go watch my movie. You want to know about this? Go watch my movie. I've already done all the due diligence. You don't need me to do another 3-hour show. You don't need to look 2 years back at my podcasts. Just watch my movie. Oh, and by the way, give me $19 for it, if you don't mind, so I can make another movie. It's a huge cash cow, and he's just been utterly shut down somehow, right? All right, enough about Alex. The other one, very specifically I want to call out, is David Icke. Again, as I've said many times on the show, half of me has amazing respect for David Icke, and the other half of me is kind of going, well, probably more than a half has more respect for what he says, but the other part is just... I don't get it. Let's just put it that way. And we have fans that as soon as they hear his name uttered, they just shut the video off. It's just like, oh God, you can't have any respect for this guy whatsoever. Maybe there's a reason for that. What I always say is this, and I watch his little channel. I don't subscribe to it. I went to a site and tried to figure out how to do it, couldn't do it. But he has a little YouTube video every week or so, and he just drills some amazing points home. And I think a lot of what people need to understand about him is that, one, he has a great mind of his own to distill out information and find ways of saying things, such as problem, reaction, solution, which was previously order out of chaos. No one understands order out of chaos on the American dollar. But problem, reaction, solution in its place would make everybody go, what the hell is this on my money? It's the doctrine of how the ruling class control you. That's what it is. And so he's done amazing things to wake me up with understanding what I call the patterns of deception, a lot of the things that they do to mess with us. Now, at the same time, as most of you know, and if you're totally new to this whole thing, there's a guy named David Icke in Britain. He was a former professional soccer player. He was a goalie, and he got rheumatoid arthritis that just nailed his body in his 20s. It was horrific, and so he couldn't play anymore. So he turned into a newscaster on television for the sports, and he commented on, obviously, soccer, or football as they call it over there, and did a great job. And then he went, I believe, to South America, took some sort of ayahuasca. I said it better that time. And he talked to a female voice for 13 hours, and when he got done, he thought he was going to be, he was told he was going to bring great truth to the world, and that he was going to suffer greatly for it, and somehow he thought he was Jesus Christ. And he went on a talk show, and they interviewed him about it, and of course he's famous. He's like, Walter Cronkite practically over there, and so he says, he confirms everything, that he's the Son of God, and everybody laughed at him, and for 20 years, he barely could, walk in public without being laughed at. And that takes some serious balls, no matter who the hell you are, to stick to your convictions, even if you're nuts, to stick to your convictions through some torturous thing where you can no longer care what people think about you because everyone thinks you're crazy, minus probably your closest friends, right? Who just think you're a little crazy. Now, he came up with something very early in this whole talking to aliens thing, or talking to whoever voice. He was coming up with this reptilian interdimensional theory where you have reptilians, inhabiting human bodies and treating us like they have no empathy. I almost hate to even say it on the show. Now, he gets accused of being a shill. And he gets accused of being a millionaire, too. Multi-millionaire. And it's supposed to be he's a millionaire because of two things, which I think is really funny. And this is from people that just don't know anything about what they're talking about. He has, at least a dozen books, probably 15 books that he's written over time, and they're self-published, you can tell. And I don't mean to say self-published. They were self-published, but they're just not, elegant, professionally laid out books. They're very fun and kitschy and cool, and they're just almost like a Coast to Coast AM episode that's just really fun to listen to, except it's a book you can read, right? You're taking everything with a grain of salt. You're watching a guy make wild connections using psychics and just hunches and stuff. So in the end, if you're an intellectual, you're hardly swayed by what's in the book, but it's entertaining, right? So people say that he's sold so many books, he's a millionaire. I think that one's really funny, right? And the other one is he does these Wembley Stadiums, talks once a year, right? And I think it's like $100 to go to it, I think, and he can fill it with several thousand people. So you do this math, and you're coming up with hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit for him. Reality check real quick, right? He's taking you through his entire house, which is like on the coast of England, I think by the White Isles or White Cliffs of Dover sort of area. But he lives in a tiny little place, right? But it's all he needs. It's cool. It's clean. It's cool. Now, for those of you who haven't published a book, and I haven't published one under my name, but I've helped rock and rollers who are super famous do their books. I've had buddies of mine who were the first writers to write books in genres of language, like the Flash programming language that you program video games in back in the day. One of my good friends published the very first language book and has done since then 3 additional language books of the ActionScript language. A guy named Mook. And my old boss wrote one of the very first object-oriented programming books in world history, right? The amount of money you make off a book is nothing. Okay, it is never to make money. Ever. I mean, if you're Anne Rice, you're going to make money. But you're going to make money off this gigantic multi-million-dollar bonus you're going to sign making the book. And there's no one giving David Icke $1 million to write a book. It's not happening. He writes them at home. He stitches them together from tons of content. And, I would wager that his most popular book, let's just say it sells 100,000 copies, I think that you can, it would be shocking to me if he made more than maybe $150,000 take home in pounds, because the taxes are going to take a huge chunk out of it. You're going to get it up front. It depends on how he does his thing. If he completely pushes it through a publisher by himself, then there's no upfront, and he just simply gets a larger piece of the take. But since he's distributed in Barnes & Noble here in the United States, he's probably getting a small upfront, maybe 10, 20 grand, and then that's taken out of his royalties, right? So it's 10, 20 grand against royalties. He sells the book, they take a little bit out of that, and once he collects from the 20 grand or pounds or whatever, he gets $1. And the books are anywhere for like $15 to $25, and so maybe he makes £5 a book. Maybe the publishers take most of it. And again, it's to build up his Wembley Stadium thing. So Wembley Stadium, he's got to pay for the stadium. He's got to pay for the days leading up to the preparation, all the people that are helping him out. So that's probably where he makes his biggest chunk of change. But come on, he does it once a year. This is a huge cash cow. Then do it Wembley, do it Staples Center in L.A., do some some amphitheater in New York, but he can't fill up those venues. This is a once a year thing. So just in terms of this guy making a ton of money, I just wanted to spell that. I just don't believe he's probably not poor, and he can go probably a couple of years without working, but who knows, man? He's got 2 kids, I think he does. He has a son at least. I thought he had an older son, a younger son, but maybe I just been following him too long. It's the same kid. The idea that him being a shill, I think that David's his own thing. I mention him because when you think about the shill kind of operation that he's running, I would say 4/5 of everything he teaches you can use in your life. You're going to take everything with a grain of salt. You're going to use some and lose some and that kind of stuff. But that's what you would do with my information anyway, right? I mentioned David for one reason, and that is that if he's a shill, he's one of the most complex shills. And again, a shill is going to be given a paycheck by someone with a very clear objective of what to do. And what is this guy doing, right? I think he's on his own. I think whatever he's saying that you don't agree with, that's completely his opinion, and you just don't agree with it. And I'm not saying you should agree with it, but what has he done? He has told you that the royalty of England are a bunch of interstellar lizard people being, infiltrating the human body and then controlling them to bring us the horrors on Earth that we know as purely banking agendas, right? It's really weird that it goes way out to some interdimensional being when the greed patterns that we see these individuals exude on Earth are very human, basic, non-empathetic greed algorithms, right? I mean, I've seen my friends who get into Facebook, right? They get super duper into Facebook. To the degree they get into Facebook, you basically have a conscious choice of how you're going to turn out, which is Facebook or empathy. Pick one. You can't have two. Because the more you shove your face into Facebook, the more you get dialed out, of reality. And so I think that when he talks about the royal family and just makes you hate them, let's just say you believe everything he said, which would be the goal of a shill. I want you to believe everything I say. Well, now, regardless of this alien infection issue, you still think that the royal family is the most hideous collection of human beings on planet Earth. Well, who's he getting his paycheck from? He's not going to tell you that the Arab sheiks are good who run the oil companies. He's not going to tell you that the corporate Koch brothers and Rockefellers in the United States are good. So who's he getting his paycheck from? Is it pure disinformation to make you look the wrong way? We'll take his Wembley Stadium performances. 4/5 of it's pretty much just, waking you up to the algorithms, these patterns of deception. I would say, again, on the meter of it all, he's doing more good waking people up. And again, I think that people who are willing to believe in interdimensional lizard people are people that were born to believe in interdimensional wizard people. Lizard people, not wizard people. Wizard people would be cool. That's a guy that's completely off on his own, I think. And you can hate him all you want, all this other stuff. I'd say to the degree you won't listen to what he says and try to distill out something that's beneficial to you, you're losing out. Because what the guy does is he aggregates, just like Drudge Report. DrudgeReport.com does not write any news. All they do is aggregate news articles that they believe have a charter of, more right than wrong. They show the contradictions of what's being reported in mainstream news by putting two articles close together. That's what David Icke does for nearly his entire presentation at Wembley Stadium. He aggregates a ton of information in the world. And again, when he starts talking about his Zulu shaman that believes in these interdimensional, you can just focus that stuff out. Be an adult. Don't get all upset and offended by what David Icke says. Try to get out what is good. You know, you don't have to tell anybody you got it from David Icke either. You can just take information and then repeat it. And believe me, I've said some stuff on this show that has been revered by the fans, specifically in messages, and I don't have the heart to tell them I got it from David Icke. Isn't that funny? Problem, reaction, solution. We talk about it on the show constantly. Well, that's his construct. That is his distillment of order out of chaos. You should get the credit for that, you know? So again, I think that there is, I just want to take a moment to say, you can get drunk on calling everybody a shill. And the drunkenness and the intoxication works like this. We want to be right. And we want lies away from us, right? So when you say that someone's a shill, it makes you feel right inside. Well, at least I don't have bad information. At least I cut off one more bad artery of information from my life. And I have the good stuff. And it's like, we're all guilty of this. Like, hey, I'm guilty of this. Kyle's guilty of this. But I think you want to keep this loop of evaluation constantly going. Because you're probably going to loop back on something that you thought was bad, and you're going to see someone consistently take hits, right? And again, if you can get into someone's personal life, and I don't mean personal, but you understand that someone doesn't fly around the world to go to conventions. What was the last guy? There's a guy that got involved with the chemtrail thing just recently, and the dude went from zero to super duper involved, flying around to all the shows. And I had two fans, one that was completely for the guy and one that was completely against the guy. And it was interesting. I was stuck in the middle. I didn't really have time to evaluate this dude. But when it came right down to it, my qualification of a shill is someone gets a paycheck, someone actually has the money to fly around the world and go to all these conventions, right? And so it got sort of suspect for a while there. And then I didn't pay attention to the guy. I've kind of just been too busy to get into a lot of the minutiae of other people's games. And I talk about chemtrails on this show from time to time, but honestly, in my personal life, I don't invest any more time in them. They're up there, they do their thing, whatever. It's not going to be me that cracks it, right? It's not going to be me that stops it. I've already done what I can to make sure people understand these things are not natural. And then someone else inside is going to have to leak it out and get fucking tired of it. And for those who are right on top of it, if anybody is actually involved with it and you're sitting there looking the other way, you're the one that needs to give a shit and stop buying the line of horse shit that you're being told that these things need to exist, no matter what they're telling you, right? Now, the challenge with being a part of this show is that I'm, thousands and thousands of miles away from most of you, So, there's this camera that turns on and this camera that turns off. The mic records when Kyle and I do our show and it turns off. We know a ton of people in the world that do have tons of money, that do have agendas, and you could easily think as soon as the camera goes off, your brain starts living my life for me, right? That's what we do in relationships, right? We, if you want to get in really good trouble in your relationship, anywhere in life, imagine what's happening when you don't know what's happening, and you'll just fuck your life up completely, right? You'll accuse people of things that aren't happening. So that is just a natural thing. So as soon as this shuts off, you're thinking, oh, this backyard must be attached to this fucking $10 million mansion, and he's hobnobbing with all these folks. Yeah, I tell you what, this house is not anything fancy, but I have been invited to think tanks by people in the film business who know I know my shit, and I'll go in and do lectures on all kinds of stuff, from the simplification of language inside computers and both out using real world history to illustrate how the computer evolution should probably mature to the next level, where computer programming languages need to become more simplified as opposed to more complex. And right now we're just making everything fucking more complex. But, at the end of my speech, which is, at a movie studio somewhere, and, I did one at MGM, Sony MGM, down just right inside the place where they're shooting films around us constantly. And I'm speaking, and when I get done, people from the State Department came up to me and shook my hands and said that was brilliant. I loved it. I didn't know they're in the audience. They just were there. I just know that everyone who's in this think tank who can take a day off or a week off to be in this think tank is obviously rolling in some dough. They don't have to be at work for a week. They're their own man, and I'm my own man too, so I can go down and speak at these engagements, right? And so, you can be utterly paranoid that if someone meets someone, they're involved with them. They're trying to do this to Donald Trump right now. Donald Trump is worth $10 billion and has been worth $10 billion for at least 10 to 15 years. And if you amateurize up what his value was from the past, he's still worth today $10 billion. He's always been about that rich. So when you're rich, people want money from you. And when they want money from you, they're going to meet you at a party. And they're going to say, can I get your photograph? And they're going to shake hands with Donald Trump. And they're going to go off and murder their fucking wife. And then all of a sudden, this look at Donald Trump hangs out with murderers, right? It happens all the time, right? You can't start accusing someone of something until you start to see them work together. They have agendas together. They formed a corporation together. They funded some Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, Once something actually occurs, I think you can put your finger down and point and say, dude, that's shill. That is absolutely someone against, they're saying one thing out this side of their mouth, but they're doing this thing out the other side of their mouth, right? That's where you got it. So finding sources of truth is most definitely more and more difficult. I think most of us realize, and this is hopefully not new to you, that YouTube is full of a bunch of robots. They look for keywords in your video title. It's conceivable that they could actually play the video, rasterize your voice into words, which then goes into a script, which then generates a robot response. But they've written software to reply inside the YouTube channels. And they typically have very asinine responses. And, there's like flat earth accusations. You're a flat earther, you're a tinfoil hat person. It's usually fairly nonsensical and fairly not engaged. Your second layer up is where you actually have what appears to be a human being replying to your video. And they're dumping in article links, because they've already prepared the article with their cleansing shill, misdirection, and they're trying to basically boil everyone away from your lucidity, right? And then there's just folks who just disagree, and it just happens. But you'll find out the people that just disagree, who are really fun to talk to, the people that constructed a paragraph in their own words that has more than just a little phrase of name calling. They actually can theorize, and you can reply, and they'll reply back. And even if you're hot and bothered with each other, it's fine. It's real, and real debate is actually worthwhile. So I don't blame anybody for trying to protect themselves. And honestly, Kyle and I have had way more accusations than you're aware of, right? You guys might be aware of having something on the Facebook page where someone's saying something about us. That's just a tiny, needle prick of what happens on the back channels, inside the messages of Facebook and that sort of thing. So, I almost wish we could record in a convincing manner, Kyle and I just reviewing some of these comments together, because we only see each other, every two to 3 weeks. And I'll tell him, hey, we got this accusation. We sort of been waiting for this organic process to occur. And again, we know we have to be vetted. We know we have to take it on the chops and sort of do what we can to increase our credibility. For me, this waking up process has been disorienting. It's been extremely time consuming. Like I said in a couple episodes back, you do sacrifice, man. You sacrifice like crazy. And you sacrifice in two different ways. One, you're the messenger that is murdered on sight constantly, right? So there's people that, you can hang out with if you believe the straight up bullshit of the world. And there's people you can date and marry if you believe the straight up bullshit. And I've met some incredible women. I've even dated some of them. And the second that I just start fucking giving out just the most tiny, inference of truth, they're absolutely not turned on. They're horrified that their image of the world is different, than what is real. And so once you start making those kind of sacrifices, being called a shill is almost like jaw dropper. You're like, really? Can't wait for us to fucking die, dudes. And we'll get up there and truth will be all we have. And you're going to look at me and go, oh, I'm very sorry I called you a shill. But the second part of the game, and a lot of you have felt this, is shorten the attention span roughly, right? And so I feel like that's a real new invention. Most people didn't grow up in that era. And so they have very, very evident in their DNA the understanding of how this is actually hurting them. And so once you've exposed that pattern, once you say, you know what, you really don't like the taste of that, do you? And they're like, well, come to think of it, no, but it's just a habit. I just do it because it's a habit. Well, through example, we can not do it ourselves. Whatever the hell that bad habit is that's screwing with our life, consuming our time, not getting us to our goals, we're not taking any steps anywhere. That's why I think that there is still plenty of time, and I mean plenty with a capital, all letters, right, to wake the planet up, to make them sick and tired of this frickin' game. And I think that there's a lot of turning points right now. I wish someone like Donald Trump, I thought Nigel Farage was that kind of guy in Britain. And I haven't followed the guy in a while. Last time I followed him, he was pretty cool. But he was sort of a straight talker in Britain. And again, it doesn't freaking matter if the guy, ended up being a shill in the end or what have you. But talking normal, calling out bullshit, that is what we need on television. That's what we need in film and TV. But it's going to start with us first, right? And Donald Trump killed Hillary because he started talking normal. And it's almost like speaking Arabic. Hillary doesn't know how to speak Arabic. She doesn't know how to speak normalness. She's never had to speak normalness in her entire life. And so that's why Trump is really changing the game. And if you think Biden's coming in to talk normal, you're sadly mistaken. Biden made fun of Trump's hair. I thought that was fucking unbelievable irony and hypocrisy on his part, right? I had to throw that in there. It was just bothering me. But anyway, so, don't give up. Definitely evaluate folks. But again, with the shill, you're really looking at someone who's getting a paycheck for it. I guarantee it. And they're going to be myopically focused on the thing that they're a shill about. It's not going to be this obtuse, I got 50 agendas and I'm moving them all in one direction. That's what a news agency does. That's what AP and Reuters does. That's what Fox News does, CNN News, all these folks. They're there to steer multiple agendas. But for a single human being, maybe two. Neil deGrasse Tyson has a couple, but his main thing is climate change when he lies on television and lies to children, right? Don't let your family listen to that douchebag speak. And anybody like him, the genius guy, with he has the question marks all over his body. Fuck that guy. They're all fucking shills, right? I think Carl Sagan meant well, but I think he was even duped. Hell, Einstein was duped. Einstein was duped to sign a letter saying that atom bombs were going to be the greatest thing on Earth, and he regretted it every day of his life. Tesla sold out. He didn't have to, but he did because he was a good guy, the dagger of goodwill. He got stabbed right in the back, didn't make any money from his invention, and now they've co-opted it so badly that we have to pay for electricity now instead of getting it free. It happens to the best of everybody. So just try not to blame everybody, but definitely, do your exercise, and best of luck. Best of luck. But reevaluate everything that you're so certain about, and be very careful about being certain about everything, right? So anyway, if you made it this far, man, this is a real esoteric one, but I just think it's something that's always on our minds if you're a truther. And I absolutely, again, we don't have any ill feelings towards anyone giving us that process. We're not immune from it. I think that if we literally marched through battle and never took a hit, and showed up on the other side, some shiny knight in armor, and we're like, we're in charge, and they're like, you never took a hit, there's no scars on you, let me see your hands, you've never been busted up or whatever. That wouldn't be our style. Kyle and I will be on that front line, cutting dudes in half right next to you, right? We'll save your life, hopefully you'll save ours, and at the end of the game we'll be peers, we'll be brothers in arms, right? Protecting freedom and all that, right? If you haven't already, go to mkultraradio.com. I won't say anything else. If you dig the videos, please subscribe. If you like this particular video, please like. Again, I'm going to always encourage you guys, go backwards in time. Look at all these things. There's a lot of overlap, here and there with the deep thoughts in the episodes, but I think there's always a kernel of something interesting for you guys. Hopefully. Anyway, as we always say, learn the rules that rule you. Over now.